Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Raise Your Hand Presents Teaching Tuesday. I'm Natasha, Director of Raise Your Hand. Happy that you could be in the space with us today, whether you're joining us live or you're going to view this short brief session that we bring you every week to just talk about things that are happening around CPS and its parents, LSC, youth, advocates, neighbors. Want to have a conversation around important things that you should know. And of course, above all things, advocate um, and get resources and solutions around. So happy for you to again be in the space with us. Something that we haven't done in the past, y'all, is have a proper introduction of like who we are. And it's just dawning on me that we've just been jumping on here having, conversations each week without really doing introductions. So if y'all are okay with a little, change from our run sheet a bit, let's go around and let's talk about who we are, what's your role to CPS, yada, yada, whatever you want to share. My daughter graduated from Lynn Bloom in 2021. Before or while she was in the district, I have experience as LSC and as a PAC chair. So on the PAC and LSC, let's see who wants to jump in and share a little bit about just a brief introduction.
Hi, I'm Kendra, mom of a whole bunch of CPS students, 7 to be exact. 4 has graduated already, grandmom, and I am a parent organizer with Raise Your Hand.
Hey y'all, my name is Chinella. I'm a product of CPS. I graduated from Harlan Community Academy. I'm not gonna say what year. I am a mother of 7. I have 3 that are still in CPS. I have been on the LSC. I've been on the PAC, advocating for equity in our schools on the south and west sides.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica. I'm a CPS parent as well. I have one daughter, and we live in the northwest side of Chicago. And I'm also the communications organizer for Raise Your Hand.
All right. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. We feel like it's important to, have this discussion. We know that there are parents who we reach through our newsletters, who contact us for for office hours, other support and advocacy around policy, reaching out to school administrators, helping to build the bridge between school and home. And then, there are parents who are busy and on the go, who, we hope that this space would be helpful to engage as you're on the go. Maybe you're at your desk or you're out, lifing. And so, again, just really want to have multi ways of connecting with parents. So as we host these spaces on Tuesdays, like we said, we want to be brief, so we won't be in this space for too long. If you're interested in joining us, if there's something that's happening at your school, maybe there's a more broader advocacy or thing that you all are organizing around, we love to host the topic. So you'd be, encouraged and invited to join us. And if there's something else that's going on more broadly around, like I said, education with a focus of equity, closing the opportunity gaps that have persisted for way too long. And so we would, of course, welcome LSC members who are advocating around issues at their school, who would love to come up and share some of their best practices and resources, because above all, Raise Your Hand has been pretty consistent over the years that, local democracy where parents and community members are decision makers and change agents is really important to us. So we focus a lot of our programming and organizing around LSC empowerment. And of course, that is going to extend to the upcoming elected representative school board. So let's see, today's discussion, we really wanted to focus as you saw in the introduction, around this framework, around what's happening in, like I said, what's happening in CPS schools. So each week we'll have a couple of topics. There'll be some themes that are going to be consistent. LSE empowerment will be consistent. So before we jump into the discussion today around whole school safety in CPS schools, and then we're going to talk about what's up next for the LSE elections and some empowerment, I wanted to just open up today's talk a little bit about our Raise Your Hand did a LSE Access and Transparency campaign, which started probably about 2 years ago, probably about a year and a half ago. And it was really around making sure that the district had certified community trainers in the community. As most of you all who are in that space know, CPS's, LSC training on their website is no longer accessible. There used to be a website where you would go through your LSE modules and you would take a test, test your skills or your knowledge at the end. That's no longer out there. But above all, we know that it's a best practice to have community trainers supporting LSE members, both from what is in the module, but as we understand, the community has the latitude to talk about the empowerment. So we not only say, what does the policy say you can or cannot do, but also where's the empowerment in that? So again, Raise Your Hand is really excited to have been a part of the push to make sure that we have certified community trainers. We have 5, so if you are interested in, your entire LSE getting trained together, which is something that we advocate for because your understanding of things as you're running through those meetings, having that training together is just really a best practice. So we are, available if it is, several of you. I know oftentimes LSEs are concerned like, hey, we can't, be or exceed a minimum quorum in the same space. There are exceptions to that. The exceptions are a retreat, which LSEs should definitely do together, but also training. So training is an exemption to the minimum quorum, so not to exceed the Open Meetings Act. So we would be willing to do training at your school, at our office space. We can definitely work to collaborate for community spaces for training. And so be looking out for new dates. We're going to host some upcoming training in our office. We're also going to host some virtual sessions and perhaps some hybrid opportunities to join some upcoming LSE training. This is going to be open for not just those who are currently LSEs, but those who are potentially candidates. I think it's just a good thing to have that coming into that space. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what this what this transparency and access report did. And I don't want to talk too much about it, into the details, but one other point, and I'm going to drop the report, or I'll make sure that we can have this out on our website and also on our social media so that you can read through this report. There's some red herrings or some long poles in the tent. So one other area I wanted to bring up before we move on is the disparity of information that is on schools' websites. There are some schools where you can go to the website, click on, say, a tab that's for parents, a drop down that says LSE, and have an understanding, if you read through it, of what has been going on at your child's school for the last 4 years. That is what we should all have access to as the public that pay taxes for any neighborhood school or any school across the district. Unfortunately, our schools that serve predominantly Black, low-income, historically marginalized children and families have a disparity of access to information. So that's where some parents are going to go to that website. They won't see a tab for LSEs. They won't be able to see who's currently serving on their LSE, the minutes, how they can contact their LSE parent reps or community reps. And so we are working with, or we have encouraged the district to continue to work with those schools to update that information. So if you're an LSE member or parent, and that's your school that doesn't have that information available, try to contact the school's principal, administration, and see what you might be able to do at your level to help bring that transparency forward. So I'll land there. That's the piece that I wanted to share about, why it's important for us to be able to have access to information and, of course, training. Before we move forward, does anyone have any thoughts on that? Is there anything that I missed out of that transparency report that we want to highlight a little bit?
I think that if you can't find it on your school website, you should at least be able to go to the CPS website and at least know what the meetings, when the meetings happen, if they are updated correctly. So it is, you can find out about meetings, but if you can't get it on the private site of the school, you should be able to go to CPS website and find that.
All right. Thanks for sharing that, Kendra. Let's see. All right. Next up on our run sheet is for us to get into this conversation about whole school safety. CPS board released their agenda for this Thursday's board meeting. And on the agenda is a resolution for creating a whole district approach to school safety. And it references, I think we talked about this in the previous teaching or previous session, was around the 2020 resolution that urged the CPS CEO to create, in order to create equity, right, and this safe school mindset for each child, a plan to phase out the school SRO. Where should we go? Where should we go from here? Do y'all want to jump in? Do y'all want to have like a talk before we share some stuff on the screen, or should we just go straight to some of the data?
Share it. Let them see it for themselves first.
All right. So while I am pulling up my screen to share, we thought it would be good to just do a very quick, like a brief, background on what is, oh, my preview is not working correctly again. Oh man. Around like the history of school policing, particularly that is in Chicago, but my screen share is not working. Gotta love technology. I don't know why that's happening. So maybe let's get into a little bit of discussion while I try to figure out tech. Is that cool? Maybe someone who has it up can briefly check in on the resolution, and then I'll share screen when I'm able.
I can go ahead and start because there was one particular part that I read that was very it was shocking to me when I read it out loud. So on the second page of the resolution, it says, whereas the vast majority of schools, 595 of 634 schools across all of our neighborhoods, have implemented safety plans without utilizing SROs. That was very shocking to me because CPS and the media really makes it seem like it's just a few schools that have eliminated their SROs. And so to see that it is the majority of schools, to be made felt like we're the ones that are tripping, we the ones that don't know what we're talking about, we're the ones that don't understand, and that's why we want the SROs out, and other schools have a better understanding, that's why they have them. And then to see almost all of them, basically, if I decide I want to round up it's only 34 schools that still have the SROs. So to see that is just like, wow, like that's crazy. But to also see and read in the resolution that those schools that are have done away with SROs are using other tools to ensure students' physical safety, crossing guards, safe passage workers, security offers, security cameras, and then also implementing things, de-escalation tactics like restorative justice coordinators and youth intervention specialists. Is very. I'm happy to see that, because what the media and CPS is trying to tell us is that these are not good ways for us to handle issues that may arise in school, but in their own report, in their own resolution, it says the opposite of what they're blasting at us. And I think that it's a reminder that as parents, we need to do our own research and figure out things ourselves instead of just listening to what CPS is saying, because it's clear that what they're telling us and what is actually going on in the schools are two different things.
That go along with, a couple of schools that we've been to. Not only do we know that that's not true, what they blasting, we heard the students saying it. Like, we have gotten opinions of the kids who are expressing that it's just a unwanted body in the building. And to where, like, which I didn't know, but they were saying like they can't even, or they're not supposed to even communicate with the kids. So, they were saying like they don't break up fights, they don't uh, they don't even talk to them. They just there. And that's almost like, I mean, it's kind of rude to have someone there, you paying them to be there, and you can't get a hello, or, I don't know. So I feel that they weren't there for the kids anyway. I think it was personal, like staff security. So yeah, that's just my take on it. So I'm yeah, just to hear that data as well. Almost 600 schools have done away with them. So if 600 schools have done away with them, that's kind of a word, right? I would think. But that's just, my take on that.
And then I also understood the actual role of the SRO through listening to the youth, which is, it just goes to show that it's again important to, we have all these discussions and all these meetings without the kids, and they are in the schools. And it was a couple of years ago, but I was somewhere, and it was around the time when Hyde Park Academy had removed their first SRO, and they were the ones that brought it to our attention that they cannot speak. They just walk past and things like that. And yeah, that's very rude and intimidating. And then I think that it perpetuates the school to prison pipeline, especially if I'm in this school, I'm walking past you, and you're not going to even say hello to me. I would imagine that that's how they acted in prison too. Like, like when the guards are walking past, like, so it's just like, what is the point of them? And then I can also say that I was in an LSC meeting of very recently when the principal did express that the SRO was needed for parents, for her safety. And, so I just was like, oh, like, wow, we keep trying to pretend like, or make it seem as though it's because of the conflict and the issues that the children are having. But she literally sat there and said that, she needs security. And so, again, I know that a lot of principals also look at the SROs as an extra body. We do know that our schools are understaffed, but if they are not able to do anything, that extra body does not matter at all. What's the point? So yeah, I'm happy to see that things are moving forward in a more positive direction. We do need to learn how to resolve conflict without needing to. I think that many times, and I've been thinking about when I was in high school, many times security guards weren't needed to resolve conflict. We were just at a school with youth a couple of days ago, and they said that they would rather have more parents in the school. And we know that that's something that CPS has been doing, pushing out parents. So I would imagine, yeah, if it was a real well-respected parent in the school, he or she could easily pull a child to the side and talk to them, figure it out, and even possibly bring, if it's two children that are having conflict, bring them together and have a discussion rather than trying to call the police, trying to have the security guards that especially don't know how to handle the emotions of a young child. It's better to have people that are trained to handle those things inside the schools instead of the SROs that can do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the ones that are trained to handle themselves. Yeah, I have so many opinions on just from experience with the SROs, and I think they took them out of a lot of the grammar schools first. And I never thought they belonged in any school, but definitely not a grammar school. And I know the elementary school that I was at, they were just bullies, literally just bullies, but bullies to the parents. You would go out, and if it was just not needed. So, and yeah, like you said, that I don't know if that and we were at the same meeting. Was it the same meeting where the principal? I don't remember if that was the principal, but I know someone did. Staff member commented about literally having the security, and they feel safe with SRO in the building, and all of the students that we talked to didn't feel safe, but the staff member definitely stood on that's what was comfortable for them. Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah, my initial reaction was same as Chanela, seeing how many schools are actually without SRLs. I feel like in the media we always hear about all the things that are going wrong or how this isn't a good idea, but then we get all this research coming out saying quite the opposite, that there's less detentions, less suspensions and expulsions, specifically towards Black and Latina students were really highly targeted for getting the most attentions, getting expulsions, and I think it's also exciting to see how all of this funding that's going towards CPD can now be used to putting in more people who have the resources, the emotional intelligence, and ability and patience to actually work with young people in across all the different grades, right? And just supporting them more with like emotional regulation, understanding their own self, and just helping them with things that are impacting them in their communities and that they also bring to school. Because it's really difficult to try to separate what is going on at home or in the community when they enter a school building. A lot of that comes with them. So I'm excited to see how that'll play out and how we can get more people and staff to just support teachers and current staff with just like the emotional mental needs that students have.
I definitely resonate with what Erica was just saying. For the schools that have been without their SROs since 2020, like it really like warms me. Like, yes, this is what, there are some good news stories in a lot of schools across the district, for those that are, hesitant, for those that don't, fully, haven't really entered into the conversation around reimagining safety. We really welcome you. Like disagreement doesn't, have to feel like, absolute tension. Let's talk about it. Let's share resources. There are some LSEs who can share with you their experience that they were originally, not understanding the possibilities, but for the resources they were able to get and bring into their school, and those hallways and classrooms feel different today, right? And so I think there is an invitation for LSCs to, have a conversation with, the district. I've seen councils, request meetings with Jadine Chow, who CPS's Chief of Safety and Security. I know that, our experience has been, to have really transparent conversations around if there's an issue around our school, what happens? We have to remember there's still a Chicago Police Department in which your school sits in their district, and they will respond if you have an emergency. We have to get away from just a huge, discrepancy of where we see some schools, have leaned on the school to prison nexus, and that's not okay. So I just wanted to pause there and see if anyone else has anything to chime in. And I think I have my shared screen up.
I'm just hoping this brings back like the after school programs and the mentoring and all the things that used to be, that when the kids and the parents felt safe in the schools. I'm looking forward to living that life again. Honestly.
So, Raise Your Hand, proudly supported the youth-led Cops Out CPS for Police Free Schools campaign in 2020. And that follows, years of their righteous work around creating schools that definitely heal and move away from this punitive, again, the school to prison nexus. So just a real quick reminder, we'll post this link out on our social media as well, and maybe even share a toolkit in the coming weeks, that can help drive some of these conversations. So this is just a quick history of, policing in schools. Definitely feels like a prime opportunity to, have this conversation, as there'll be plenty of community opportunities to continue this dialogue. I think that we are definitely in the moment of coming up with solutions, and definitely coming together. I think all ideas are on the table to keep our schools safe. But back in 1948, school policing started out in LA as a response to desegregated schools. When we say that this is that school policing, not we, when the research says that policing in schools is absolutely has racist roots, particularly in schools, and then policing, of course, goes back to the when America had enslaved people. So 1948, then we moved to the 1950s. The first school resource officers, commonly then known as, just regular law enforcement officers, were permanently assigned to schools in Flint, Michigan, as part of a community policing strategy. You'll see that kind of transcends to 1966, the origins of Officer Friendly, right here in Chicago. Public schools. And this is absolutely a branch off from their 1980s, or excuse me, it then transcended to the 1980s and 90s DARE. So for those of us who was a CPS student back in the 90s, y'all remember DARE? And there's so many research and good thesis papers out there around that. And so, and then it gets into different different calls from the federal level. So in 1998, as a response to, more policing in schools. Then President Bill Clinton, who's also behind the 1994 crime bill and other initiatives, calls for more police in schools. That was also a time when we recall Columbine definitely hit, and there was multi-million-dollar investment, if you will, again from the federal government to states to hire resource officers. A lot of research then came out of the U.S. Department of Education that says that school-based arrest and referrals really is a concern for civil rights, as Black students and students with disabilities are disproportionately harmed by the practices. And so that was over 10 years ago. And we're still having the conversation in Chicago public schools, as written in this resolution we'll see read, I believe, introduced and read on Thursday. We'll talk about that persistence of students with disabilities, Black male and female students, understanding that I'm using gender language that is in the policy, but that, the students are, who have historically been harmed, continue to be today. Again, the federal level, in 2013, after the Sandy Hook shooting, the Obama administration prioritized more grant applications, and we really start to see a resurgence or proliferation of the narratives around the use of school resource officers in schools, particularly after this. 2013 was a pivotal point. As you can see here, 2014, there really is a push to, I would say, pause, if you will, or to consider the ramifications of all this flushing of federal funding towards policing. There's an effort from the Obama administration to root out the biases that policing in schools inherently causes. This transcends, again, we're going from the Bush administration to the Trump administration, whether they're Democrat or Republican. This one seems to be pretty, agnostic around what your political lean is. The Trump administration continues the call for more policing. Just as this one kind of sticks out to me, as you all remember, I think this officer, the SRO, at this particular school was recently held or went to trial for retreating instead of, protecting the lives of students and staff at this particular school. And it just kind of reminds me of how, in some instances, whether an SRO is in a building or not, it definitely has not kept students and, like I said, staff and the community safe. And then we see, again, just this political sort of narrative around, the former education chief, Betsy DeVos, rescinds that Obama era guidance around rooting out the biases and confirms that schools, particularly those of the non-white students, for their violent behavior, must be policed. Excuse me. Did someone have a thought? I think I saw something in the chat. Did I miss another school that was an example of not keeping young people safe in their school? Uvalde, Texas. I think there were something like over 70 armed. They looked like they were, military going out on a, deployment or a mission by their, sort of battle rattle. Yet they stayed safe in the parking lot. And so, of course, this timeline doesn't really tap much into it, but we definitely know as a, righteous movement and rebellion that happened after the murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many more. that there is, just a call for reimagining safety in schools and places of learning. And so we see, again, just more disparity research coming out in that SROs in schools have been, deeply, I don't know, what would you say? Problematic. It's a problematic policy that definitely needs to be reimagined. So just another brief, reminder of where the discussion around policing, there's a ton of research that's out there. I don't know that there's any that really support having police in school. Just having researched this from my LSC days when our principal, really didn't want to entertain the conversation. It was like, okay, let's put all things on the table. Where are the best practices for SROs? And in some schools, just seeing them really dig into that research is what helped them move to some of their discussion. Let's see. All right, I went off on a little bit of a tangent. I want to pause there and yeah, let's see. Any reflection or reaction to that history?
We do have a few comments. What is the alternative to uniformed police officers in schools? Because they're the ones who most likely stop altercations. And then, yeah, this comment. And there was another comment before that as well. And then somebody else did mention they used to work at a school that didn't have SROs. The security guards are horrible. They're mainly there to do administrative work, so it really depends on the administration and what they're going to tolerate from them.
To answer that first question, I believe I think we gave examples of the alternatives to uniform officers, but that's by the school and or the school discretion. But they don't stop altercations, and that's not in the just from what we have the research that we've done. They are not there for that. Especially with the students. So I don't know any other alternatives other than programming and other resources that could be the restorative justice officers, counselors, mentoring programs, those things. Those, in my opinion, because this is just our opinions, but is the alternative to a uniformed police officer in the school.
Yeah, and then I think that it goes back to not understanding what an SRO can and cannot do. I think that especially for adults, creates a lot of confusion with wanting them in the schools because they cannot stop altercations. They cannot get in the middle of any of those things. And then I also think that if most people have a history of being in CPS, that may be another reason why they are not understanding that there's a difference now, because there was a difference. I can remember when I was in high school. I remember the change between the security guards and the SROs. I remember that the security guards were very different when I first started high school versus when I was like leaving out. And I didn't realize it until just recently. Thinking about, I was just a real quick story. When they decided to really start implementing we always had metal detectors, but when they really started implementing them and dedicating their time to using them every single morning when we were coming in and out. I remember one day I was pulled to the side because I looked suspicious. As we were coming in, we were in line, and I was pulled to the side, and the security guard wanted to search me because I looked suspicious. Um, I remember later in, like my junior and senior years, those security guards just standing around like, nah, I ain't gonna do nothing. I'm not getting in between this. And so I don't know if those like rules were implemented to the duties of an SRO now, but they absolutely cannot get into the middle of an altercation. They're not able to do anything. I think that again, like some other things that we could do is restorative justice coordinators. We do need more counselors in the school. What I'm learning from talking to parents recently is that they did not understand that school counselors are not the same as like social emotional counselors. So they were thinking, okay, our school has enough counselors, but so we shouldn't have a problem with the social emotional aspect of what our children are going through on a day-to-day basis. But those counselors are for making sure they got the right classes, helping them apply for college and things like that. So to have more restorative justice coordinators in the school, to have youth intervention specialists, real counselors, after school programs. I'm thinking of all the things, a parent center or a parent room where the parents can hang out. I'm thinking of all the things that were in the schools when I was a student and that made me feel safe. Having something to do before school or after school that was productive, that wasn't school work. Having people that I could go talk to that were listening, that wanted to do their job, that showed that they cared. It is. I think that those are what the alternatives is, because again, these SROs are not able to do anything if a situation happens, and we've heard time and time again, and with my own ears, principals say that they don't even need the SROs for the students; they need them for protection for themselves, which I think is ridiculous. But they're not for the students. So I don't know what the point is, especially since 600 out of 635 schools no longer have them. There are plenty of alternatives.
Yeah, right on, Kendra and Charnella. And, to the point, we love a good policy, right? Like again, this is where we've been able to help push us through, where we might not, have the access to the most current information, right? So, we look at policy, we help advocate with parents to use these. So in the chat, if you are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you should see a link coming through. This is derived from what you can call the student code of conduct. So this is the student rights, and if you just do a keyword search, it tells you, and I'm going to do that right along with you. So once you open that and you do a keyword search, it tells you the situations where a school administrator or staff can engage an SRO or the police. And there are only two reasons. And they are not, gone are the days for interacting with fights. It is only around, uh, I should say, there's one in case of a non-emergency that might be used up to the school's discretion, but it's particularly around those areas that involve a criminal act. And so that has been in the policy for at least several years now. And that has been what a lot of schools have realized, or when LSEs brought that forward, the conversation around, but the SROs are mentors. The SROs help in the lunchroom. The SROs help us, staff the hallways. They cannot, according to policy, be used for those antiquated reasons, like full stop. So the policy is there in the chat. And so great question, Hester, for bringing that forward. Let's see here. Let's see. We can disagree. I think it's cool. Seems like political talking points. I've seen officers stop altercations. Yes, they can do better in some regards, but I've seen them keep students safe plenty of times. Uvalde was one negative experience that shouldn't be used to completely rid schools of police. Right on, Hester. And we're not advocating that as well. We are going through a timeline that encompasses the beginning of SROs, some of the instances that have pushed more federal attention to SROs. And I think ultimately what we have been saying is that there are no best practices that have come out of the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And in Chicago public schools' own data, they show that this is essentially a failed program, failed process. Now, that is not against individual police officers. We're talking about the program and the policy that exists in the school. Thanks for the comment.
And I just wanted to add really quickly that while this discussion is around SROs and removing them from the schools, SROs and security guards are two different things. So there will still be security guards in the school. We are talking about these bodies that are in the school that are literally just bodies, and they can be replaced with individuals that are more useful to the curriculum, to the culture and climate, to other things. These are just bodies that are literally just there.
All right, was that it for the questions? Let's see, I saw, oh, there was one more comment that came through. The school where I used to work, they didn't have SRO and the security guards were horrible. They are there to do the administration's duty work. So I think no matter who is there is up to the administration, what they're going to tolerate from them. Right on. Thank you, Sarama, for bringing this point. The culture shift that needs to happen in the schools is what is an example of what we were talking about earlier, that there are some schools that since 2020 who've made the decision to remove their SROs and hire youth intervention specialists, hire mentors, use their resources for proven best practices like restorative and transformative justice, schools that have created peace rooms, invested in their restorative justice process and circling and training. That is an example of the shift, that it's not so much about just the policing, that we need to have a mindset, and a culture shift towards what those schools look like. And so I'm excited for the schools that are already leaning into that. And we're already seeing the outcomes. And listen, if to feel in duress in your place of learning, perhaps this is going to help us shift away from, the opportunity gaps that we see happening in academics and, of course, social emotional health. Thanks for those comments. Again, we'll have upcoming opportunities. We have in the past, we've hosted solidarity calls with LSCs and community. I think it's time for us to do a conversation on this, whether you agree or not, or you're somewhere in between. I think there's a lot that we can learn from one another. Looking at the district's, agenda and that resolution that's coming up, I think it's definitely an opportunity for us to tap into our resources. Alder people or aldermen have resources to be able to support schools and ideas. There's aldermen from different wards that can be able to bring some of those best practices. So I think this is really an all hands on deck approach, and definitely one that, again, disagreement does not have to equal disrespect. Or accusations, right? So let's be in community around this and lean forward. I think that was a good pivot point. I know, let's see here. I know that we are moving to wrap for moving towards closing today's live. But I wanted to, I think we'd be remiss, right? So we talked a little bit about LSE empowerment. So if you missed us at the beginning, we talked about access and transparency. We'll drop the comments or the report on our social media and our website so that you can tap into that report. But the LSE election season is underway. And so for those of you who have applied to be candidates, that deadline was last week, Wednesday. Next up is if you're interested in applying to be an election judge. There are thousands needed across the city. And so that looks like for schools that will host their elections on April 10th and April 11th, they need folks, just like when you go out to vote in a municipal election, an election judge to help make sure the process goes smooth and is equitable and fair. You will be paid a stipend of $275. You have the option of working both days for a total of $550. And so the application is actually quite simple. I'll drop in the chat, and we can also post on our social media. So IL, raise your hand, social media. You'll see us post these, post links. You have until February 20, oh darn, the date just escaped me. Is it February 21st? To apply for election judge. So that will be until tomorrow. Okay. And it's an online form. So we'll drop it in the chat. And of course, it'll be on our social media. So, hopefully everyone will go out and apply to be an election judge. It's a really simple process. CPS district office does provide training. And so it really is sort of a good way to support the process. And then finally, last point around the elections is the candidate forums. Those are going to be held March 11th through the 19th. Some schools have already posted their candidate forum. If your school that you're running hasn't already, they should be letting you know. LSEs usually vote in their February meeting when their forum is going to be held. Raise your hand is available to support. If you need, if you need support with preparing for the candidate forums, we provide tips, resources, and can do some modeling, particularly for those who are, let's be very clear. There are some folks who are going to run for LSE and they need 6 votes because, they're not challenged. There are quite a number of schools that will have more than 6 parents running or 2 community members. So we provide support, and students. There's a lot of students at some schools. Some schools have 6 students running for 2 seats or 3 seats. So we are definitely open. Kendra and Charnella will have office hours available. So please reach out to us if you'd like to be connected with some support for the upcoming candidate forums. That's all I got. Let's go around before we tap out. Anything that y'all wanted to lift up before we move to wrap up?
Yeah. So I'm going to ask who vote for community members, and that will be the parents in the community who vote for you. And other than that, no, I don't have anything else.
So yeah, if you are running as a community member, you do want to make sure that you get outside and let your neighbors know as well. They do have the ability to vote. If you know any parents that are running for the parent seat, let them know you're running for a community seat, and get to talking and see how you guys could support each other. But anyone that are, you can always go to the LSC website to check your boundaries. Oh no, yeah, you can always go check your boundaries and see, how far out you can solicit your votes. But anyone in that community boundary is available to vote for parent and community members.
Right, finding that mute button. Thanks everyone for joining us for another Teaching Tuesday. Hope you learned something in this space. Hope you refreshed a memory around this work that you may have. And before we wrap, I definitely want to invite you to join Raise Your Hand for any of our upcoming programming. Stay tuned to that space. We're also going to add, like I said, the need to have a community discussion around SROs to share ideas around reimagining safety in all of Chicago's schools because equity matters, a great deal in this space. And I'm excited about the upcoming opportunities to have LSE community-based training, as well as the upcoming supports for the elected representative school board that is happening this November of 2024. So stay tuned to our events, our social media. We thank you for joining us today. Be well, take care of yourself. We'll see you next week. Peace, y'all.